Okay, this is it. The first episode of Beyond the Frets. This is an idea I've had for honestly a while now. I've been really wanting to start a podcast. I really enjoy the format. In the past 2 years, I've listened to more podcasts than music, honestly. It's really been a lot of fun just checking out, things about stuff I don't know. That's what it's all about, right? And, what's better than giving you my amazing voice? I'll be honest, this is a lot less climactic than I thought. I guess I should have known I would have just been recording the intro just alone with my cat sitting on my lap. Because the interviews are tons of fun and really insightful, and you're going to really enjoy it. But just recording this bit is a little sad, I must say. But I'm very excited. Episode 1 is honestly a big one. Before we begin, I just want to do a couple little housekeeping things and say that this podcast would not be possible without the support of the Mid-American Center for Contemporary Music. I'm very grateful that they've backed me and given me support for this project and getting it out to you. And as you, the listener, if you're enjoying what you're hearing, enjoying these episodes, and you want to hear more, it's really important that you give a rating and a review on Apple Podcasts or whatever platform you are using. It's super, super important that you like and follow the podcast, and again, give it a rating and a review, because that's how other people start hearing about it. Of course, the best way for other people to hear about it is for you to share it as well. So please get the word out, because I've got so many interviews, so many people that I want to, bring these conversations into the world with. So obviously it's no surprise who the guest is. I can't really bear the lead here. It is Master Vulcan Wizard Ben Monder. Honestly, there have been very few instances in my life where listening to something or someone just completely changed the way I even thought about music or the guitar or how the universe worked. And hearing Ben Monder for the first time, and every subsequent time ever, has been one of those experiences. I was a young, swashbuckling freshman at Capital University in 2011, almost 10 years ago. That is horrifying, by the way. I'll be 15 in June. Just kidding. I'll never forget hearing Ben Monder for the first time. One of my older buddies, probably a senior at the time, a guitar player friend, he showed me Ben Monder's album Dust. And from those first notes, I just knew that this was something really special and just so beyond my grasp. And I still feel the same, honestly, after all these years. There's something just unbelievably inspiring and terrifying and pensive and chaotic. I don't know. I think Ben's music just really kind of hits all of the aesthetically pleasing things to me. It's just beyond words sometimes. So I was really, really pleased to get him on the podcast. I've known Ben for a couple years now. I was able to get him out to Columbus, actually, to do a solo show at Filament when I was booking some shows there. And that was one of the great joys of my life, my brief life as maybe a curator or events, booker. I definitely want to do some of that once the pandemic is over. And we ended up bringing him out, and it was, totally packed. It's just amazing listening environment. And Ben just honestly brought the house down with a really inspiring solo show, and one that I'll never, ever forget. And I was really grateful for that experience, and we've kind of kept in touch ever since. So I was thrilled that he wanted to do the podcast with me. I guess now is a good time to say that if you don't know Ben and his music and his history, he's been really on the cutting edge of guitar playing, jazz, avant-garde, just everything he does is just to an extreme degree and high level of proficiency and artistry, honestly. Ben's done everything from recording and playing with the great Paul Motion and the Electric Bebop Band and some other albums. He was in Maria Schneider's orchestra for many years, and he also was the guitarist on David Bowie's last album, Black Star. And of course, he has his own solo projects and solo albums since the mid-90s. He's put out a great number of them, and they're all fantastic. So if you don't know Ben and his music, I would absolutely check him out. Listen to the album Dust. I love that one. I also love his playing on his latest record called Day After Day. It has a lot of solo guitar material, which I think is maybe the most he's recorded solo guitar on one album, I think. So there's a lot of that. And his playing on Black Star, the David Bowie album, is really fantastic. So whatever you find of his, I'm sure you will enjoy. And honestly, I want to quit blabbing, and I want to get to this interview that I did. We were able to really kind of get into his process and his background and influences, and even what he thinks about the age of social media and musicians. So, you want to know the secrets of the musical multiverse? Sit down, grab an axe, and get abducted. Welcome to Beyond the Frets.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks for taking the time to do this. I appreciate it.
Sure. Thanks for the invitation.
Yeah, my pleasure. So I actually wanted to, Natural Selection just came out. And I'm really digging it. I kind of want to talk about that second album. It was recorded like early last year. Something like that?
Yeah, I think in February, maybe.
Okay.
No, that doesn't. Man, I don't really remember. I'm sure it says so on the. I don't know if you got the physical CD, but it's got to say that information somewhere.
I'm sure. I ordered it, but it hasn't come yet.
The main thing I remember about that session is, as I was loading my car with my amps, my back went out, and I almost couldn't move. I was just stuck in my booth. Oh. Kind of like I couldn't even like shift in my chair. Like it was just excruciating.
Oh, horrible.
So that was that record.
Well, back to Stair Baby. How did that album? I know it kind of happened after you guys had been touring for a while, right?
Mm-hmm.
So was that music new to the session, or were you kind of workshopping it during the tour?
Most of it we'd played a lot on tour, and then there were a couple of things that we just never really fit into the set list, so they were relatively new. Can't remember which ones. I have to go back and
sure
and listen. Yeah, we were pretty comfortable with more than half of it.
Okay,
80% of it maybe.
Yeah, and I know that you've been a metal fan for a long time, and I grew up listening to death metal and black metal, all the shades of metal. And I always felt like it was a very obvious transition to like get into jazz. It's kind of like there's like these weird threads of just imagination and inspiration, and sometimes just total chaos that exists in both of those worlds. I feel like it can mesh naturally. Not that Stair Baby is necessarily even jazz. It doesn't even matter what you call it. But obviously, all the music come from that world.
Yeah, there are a lot of influences that converge, and you can't really pick any one of them out necessarily so easily. But there's, I don't know, maybe the common thread for me would be a type of intensity that, like, my favorite jazz performances have given me, and favorite metal will give me. Like, remember once on WKCR, which is the Columbia University radio station in New York, a really, really fantastic station, and they do a few jazz shows. And they have been doing something for like decades called the Musicians Show. And I was on it once, and maybe my best segue I ever came up with. So the musician show is like it sounds. A musician comes in and just plays whatever they feel like and sort of DJs for a 3-hour slot. So I played the John Coltrane impressions from the half note and segued it right into the first tune off of Chaos Sphere. And it just worked so well.
Wow.
So I'd recommend trying that.
Okay.
You have a playlist you want to make up. There's something, as disparate as those styles are. There's a common thread there.
Yeah, absolutely. That intensity, like you mentioned, and some of it just. I love the guitar tone, especially on Something of a Memory. I can't remember on Natural Selection, but it's just like wall of sound, just brutality. It's like beyond distortion. It's just, I love it. I couldn't tell if it was like doubled with the bass or not. It was so just drony and
possible. Yeah, there's some tunes like that.
Mm-hmm.
I may have had like both distortion pedals on.
Okay.
And then, I know that I brought the amps that threw my back out, which is one of them's a really heavy a concert. I guess it only has 2 10s in it, but it's just a big heavy amp.
Oh yeah, I've seen you play that one. It's like Tweed or something.
Oh yeah, I brought it to Columbus.
Yeah, I think you did.
That's right. That was the one I was carrying around in my car. And then the other one was just an old deluxe.
Okay. So, I mean, just going along with recording, you've done quite a lot of records. Is there anything about that process that has been difficult, or do you just find it's kind of natural at this point?
Just recording in general?
Yeah, just being in that type of space where it's just a different kind of pressure, different kind of environment, different kind of musical.
Well, I don't necessarily feel a lot of pressure if I make sure that I'm prepared.
Sure.
And so, I generally try to over-prepare because I really don't like feeling anxious at a session. Like there's nothing worse for music than anxiety or stress. And I'm, fairly comfortable in that environment at this point. But I did have this weird episode of red light fever not even that long ago, which was really took me by surprise, and it was extremely uncomfortable. It was like,
wow.
Maybe I shouldn't even say what record it is.
You don't have to say specifically. What?
But it was a classical composer had written a piece, and it wasn't even that difficult. But all of a sudden, I just started panicking. And I had a really simple line to play, and all these people there, and suddenly it was just like a rookie. It was super weird. Like you never know when that stuff's going to hit, but
just like the bat.
Yeah. Anyway, usually that's not really an issue anymore. I do remember my first ever recording session. I think I was maybe 21 or 22, and it was a public service announcement for, if I recall, it was like basically a jingle. Like, no, I wasn't.
Oh, wow.
I wasn't speaking. I was playing on the music behind this PSA to urge cab drivers to use their plastic divider. or whatever that's called. And that was my first session, and I was just so nervous. Like, I could barely get through.
Yeah.
I remember it was a pretty simple part, and I had my Strat because, I figured that would be the right guitar to use.
Sure.
And basically, I just remember we had to punch like every 2 bars. Like, I just couldn't get through more than 2 bars without just loving it. And it was just like I'm just sweating blood. And
right.
So,
did you ever end up doing more like real recording work, like in that type of world, or was it just mostly with?
Oh, that's a good question. I thought of kind of going in that direction when that was actually a thing that one could do with your career. And at some point, I kind of made a conscious choice to go the more, creative path.
Sure.
And not pursue, because in those days, if you wanted to pursue jingle work, you had to make an all-out effort to do that. Try to cover too many bases. So I didn't, done a number of things like that just through various connections.
Sure.
I did a couple of, not even all that long ago, like within the last 10, 15 years, did a couple of jingles, did a Pellegrino commercial.
Wow.
An acoustic guitar. And there was a Coke. I remember this, it was like a Spanish wedding Coke commercial. Anyway, whatever. Just because I knew the jingle house producer there. But anyway, you were asking about the comfort level in recording sessions. I would say, my own recordings are a lot more stressful.
Mm-hmm.
It often takes more than one try to get it right. And as I'm gearing up to do another one, I'm just kind of wondering about the strategy to make it more expedient.
Sure. What are you preparing for?
Well, since I've basically just been writing the last 6 months, because there's nothing else much to do, I have like a bunch of material. So my next recording project's going to consist of probably, it seems like about 75% solo guitar.
Oh, wow.
Music, and then various other things. I have a guitar drum piece, a couple of things with vocals.
Okay.
The guitar, drum, and vocal thing. Not really, I didn't really write any bass parts this time. I might just, if I'm hearing something, I might put one down myself later on my fake 6-string bass.
Well, that kind of leads me to another question I had. What was your first kind of experience with solo guitar in general, and what kind of led you down that path of even pursuing it in the way that you have?
It's a good question. Thinking of like early, like really influential experiences of listening, and remember I did a summer session at Berkeley when I was 16. They did these 7-week summer courses, and I had a guitar ensemble class, or it was just like 4 or 5 guitarists and a teacher, and that was basically like my guitar lesson, I think, for that time. And they would have seniors come in and practice their senior recitals for the class, just to get the experience playing. And I remember this one guy came in and played just at that, to my ears at that time, just the most beautiful electric guitar solo piece. And I have a vague oral memory of what it sounded like, but nothing really specific.
Sure.
And I even think I remember that it was called like Walden Ponder.
Oh,
And it was kind of a, you know, as the title suggests, sort of a pastoral or almost like pan-diatonic type of piece. But it just
sure.
really struck, it was like a vocabulary that I'd never heard before. And something struck me in that performance. Like I wanted, you know, it wasn't even a conscious thing, but in some way I'm like trying to replicate that early experience. So I think that led me to start exploring solo guitar, solo like electric guitar. And then just as a listener, being a huge fan of Ralph Towner, and then later discovering Roberto Gismonti and what solo guitar could do in their hands, and you know, further inspiration.
Those like early, explorations into solo guitar, where you're just trying to arrange tunes, or were you writing, or kind of a combination?
I was trying to write the original tunes. In college, I remember having to do, as an assignment, do a couple of arrangements of standards. And I remember doing like a way overly ambitious arrangement of My One and Only Love, which like switch keys and everything.
Sure.
It was pretty awful, but in my defense, I was 19. But generally, I think I was trying to just sort of capture the language that I heard in that early listening experience, and the language of some of the other things that I was listening to or starting to listen to.
Yeah. It's very funny how we can have just a totally random experience like that, at that age. And it wasn't even like a famous dude. It was just some senior.
He might be famous now. I don't remember who it was.
And his name, Bach. It's very funny how we can have those experiences and they can just kind of stick with us no matter where or what. It's just kind of like, I can do this thing. Like, it's possible.
Well, it's like something inside of you is waiting for a catalyst.
Yeah.
Okay, like even being in high school, maybe like a freshman in high school, and seeing like the senior rock band. Like I remember so clearly, like during assembly, maybe it was like near Christmas break or something. It was like some assembly, and I can still play the riff that I remember hearing the guitar player play, and it was like it was just like hair raising. It was so inspiring. Like if I heard it now, it would probably sound like a bad high school rock band. But who knows? Maybe they were great. They sounded just incredible. Like that to my ears at that time.
Right. Well, I love that idea. I mean, you kind of mentioned that it like kind of awakens something that's like already in us. It's not like, I like the idea that it's not totally new. It's just something in us, and whatever experience or something you hear or something you feel or something, you talk to someone about, it just kind of unlocks.
Sure. Otherwise we wouldn't be going in this direction in the first place, right?
Sure. Yeah. But what you mentioned earlier, you kind of took a conscious decision to go the creative route. I wonder how long it kind of took you to get to that place. So I feel like that's definitely something I've struggled with personally, and I obviously talk to my peers my age, and it's something we try to figure out. Obviously, it's a little different for us in 2020, but I wonder, what was kind of your revelation or your process getting to that point where like, okay, I'm doing this, not doing that.
Just wanted to be happy with myself. I wanted to be happy with my decisions and not regret, lost opportunities. And I felt really strongly about music, and that I wanted to, strengthen my ability, my creative process, and and it was kind of going to be an all or nothing type of venture. So I just, at one point I just decided to commit as close to 100% as I could to that pursuit. Not to say I still wasn't mainly supporting myself doing weddings that entire time.
Okay.
But,
Sure.
But that was, so I could just work a few hours on the weekends, and I remember that was a great time because my overhead was really low.
Gotcha.
Just work on music all week, and then go to the middle of New Jersey on the weekends, bang out a few weddings.
It's the way to do it.
Which I really didn't mind at the time. I actually sort of enjoyed it.
Really?
I did, yeah. The band I played with most often, we all got along. The drummer was really strong, and I think that's really important if you're going to be playing music like that.
Oh, yeah.
If the time is you feel supported, the time is there. You can work on your own time. I always felt like I could work on the aspects of music, of playing the guitar, to pretty much any gig at that point.
Yeah. That's a good point. I mean, especially when, logistically, you have to have food on the table or whatnot, and you have to pick certain gigs, but it doesn't mean that there isn't something to be gained from those experiences.
Yeah, if you have the right attitude. There's situations where you're not going to gain anything, obviously.
Yeah.
Everyone's working against you. But luckily, I was in a pretty good situation as far as that.
Yeah. I forget who told me about this or whatever, but there's kind of like this litmus test that I've been using like for gigs, whether I'm going to take it or not. It has to hit 2 out of the 3. Either be worth it monetarily, do something for my career, or just be fun. And if it doesn't hit at least 2 out of the 3, then maybe I should reconsider.
Yeah. I guess I heard a slightly different version of that, which is like the hang's got to be good.
Yeah, exactly.
Money or the music. And 2 out of 3.
Yep.
So
in our email thread, you had mentioned the social dilemma, and I kind of just want to talk about social media in general, because in my estimation, it seems like you're someone that doesn't really use it hardly at all, which is, you're very smart. But I don't know. I guess I just wonder what your thoughts are with how music is so seemingly integral to people needing to be on social media.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. It's something I've thought about a lot, and I've personally taken the decision to get off it just because it worked for me.
And is that working professionally for you? Because it seems like if I absolutely had no presence, that could be a problem. My concession is that I have a Facebook page.
Yeah.
That's a musician page. I don't have a personal page. Although I have like a only personal page so that I can manage my professional page.
Sure.
But if I didn't post at least my gigs or whatever the equivalent of gigs are these days, or lessons or whatever, that would be really detrimental to me. There's no other way to publicize.
Yeah.
So, and I don't do emails, which is not essentially.
Oh, you mean like
different? I don't really have an email list. I should, but I just don't. I have a really hard time imposing on people.
Sure.
I just don't want to add to their inbox. Hey, check me out.
Right.
Goes against it.
Well, that's the thing. It just kind of worked out because this year I don't have any professional opportunities really that I need to promote. I also just started grad school, so I'm kind of just like in this different place where I don't really need to focus on like putting myself out there as much. So I haven't had to run into the problem of, oh, what am I going to do? Because I can't promote anything. So I think that's a question that I have to kind of handle. But I think it's been nice just completely deleting it and having this break. And then obviously eventually I will have to have some sort of, platform, minimal platform to just say, hey, I'm doing this. But it definitely started to bug me that I would spend so much time just making videos or just, posting what I'm doing every day.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
And did you feel like you needed to do that just to remain in the public eye?
Yeah, pretty much. I think in my age group, it's what everyone does.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone's just posting every day.
Yeah, sometimes I think, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. No. I just think back, it wasn't even that long ago where publicizing a gig meant buying a bunch of postcards, putting little 5-cent stamps on it, and mailing them to like 200 people in your area.
Wow.
You never even heard of that.
No, that's like out. That's like out to me.
That was the only way to do it, And then the fax machine came along.
Sure.
That was a very short-lived, like, unfortunate period in publicity, but you get faxes about people's gigs, and that really felt like an imposition because, like, a little piece of paper came through, unsolicited.
Yeah.
Somehow that felt worse than like checking your mailbox, like your physical mailbox, and getting a postcard. But yeah, I don't really know what else to do. But I feel like even with that, you can still keep it to a relative minimum. You don't need to have your attention completely compromised.
Right.
But you say you're posting videos. It's like when I check in once in a while to various platforms, I see a lot of. I mean, it's a kind of a weird way that music has evolved, or maybe devolved, because there's people are posting short, like 30-second or minute clips because no one has the attention or desire to really like sit there for longer than that. So it's kind of like you get like a big like hit of sugar or something, like something that's you got to really do something exciting if you're only going to be doing it for 30 seconds. But where does that leave? Like what is musically going on, and is that what music is turning into?
I know. I mean, in the Social Dilemma, they talk so much about the attention economy. Mm-hmm. And that's it. I mean, if it's not exciting within literally like 3 seconds, people are just going to scroll past. And you can see that. You can see those analytics of how much, when people scroll past. And it's crazy. And I think that was... No, go ahead.
I think there's some studies determine that kids don't listen to more than... I don't know this. I think my wife just told me this, but they don't listen to more than like the first 30 or 60 seconds to a pop song. So like pop songs are engineered to get all the hooks in like right away before they move on to the next song.
Yeah, exactly.
So I mean, if that's what's happening to attention in general, I mean, someone like me is kind of doomed. I mean, I still like to make albums that like have a narrative, like 60, 70 minutes.
Right, exactly.
And I actually still consciously try to listen like that. Like I'll set aside time to listen to somebody's entire record. And it's harder and harder, frankly, because there's nothing that supports that behavior.
Yeah, in general, as listeners and musicians and everything, it's a little bleak sometimes, but I don't know. I mean, do you feel like do you just try to ignore that this is happening, or just be aware of it and just be like, it's fine?
Yeah, but it's hard to ignore it, because even if I live in a treehouse and just detached from everything. If everyone else is doing it, that affects my reality. Like if I walk down the street and everyone's like got their nose in their phone, I'm not immune to that. That has that. I feel like I feel that, and I can't live in a vacuum. Like it's just not.
Yeah,
not the way human beings exist. So
this is very true.
There's kind of no escape. Like even if I escape, there's nowhere to really go.
Yeah. Yeah, you did say in the email we're all doomed. I kind of have to agree a little bit, but it's kind of the fatalist nature. And you said you listened to Rabbit Hole as well, the podcast.
Oh yeah, I went through that a few weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it's basically like the only way that the business model of these social media platforms are going to work is to divide us as extremely as possible. Like it's not that they have a grand design to do that, but that's just the way the economy is going to work. It's like it's inevitable. So
yeah, exactly. It's the nature of it.
And we're seeing the results playing out, right?
Yes.
Like faster than anyone thought.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, all I can say is, I wonder what kind of studies people will be doing about this time in human history, and if it will be like
if there's anyone left to study us.
Well, yeah, exactly.
But you know what? I don't want to paint it all bleak because like I've gotten I've learned a lot from various YouTube videos. Like there's some amazing stuff on there, and I've encountered artists that I never would have come across before. So there's always two sides to it.
Of course.
And then again, on the negative side, I have a feeling that most of what people know of you as a performer is through YouTube these days. I might be wrong, but I kind of feel that way. Mm-hmm. And so if you don't have, and it's impossible to manage your own YouTube presence.
Right.
Just put whatever up there.
Anyone,
I think my YouTube presence is pretty awful from what I've seen. Like there's almost nothing I actually feel good about up there. And I wish I could take most of it down, but it's just like a losing battle. So
sure. Yeah, I guess that's kind of a funny thing. Anyone can put anything up, and as much as people you can try and flag it or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've gotten a couple taken down.
Really?
A long time ago when I was maybe more idealistic and thought that I had some control. I actually contacted a couple of people that which I had to actually create a YouTube account just so I could contact them. But I said, look, I'm really not comfortable with this. This performance really sucks. A couple of them did, and a couple also just completely ignored me. So
yeah, I think my favorite YouTube video of you is you're on the roller coaster.
Oh, great. Well, yeah, I was a little ambivalent about that one, but my friend was like, "No, this is a great video. It's got to stay." So I'm like, "All right, fine, whatever."
It's one of those deep
gems. At least I'm not just like trying to play giant steps and blowing it.
Right. That's most of Instagram these days. Not missing much. Well, you mentioned you've been writing a lot during this past 6 months. Has anything about this whole crazy year shifted the way you've been writing, or anything different, or are you just kind of using your same process, just amplified because of the amount of time?
I would say the latter, at least consciously. We're influenced in subtle ways by everything, so lockdown is probably somehow influenced my writing, or maybe not. I don't know. That's pure bullshit. I'm just yeah. I mean, I'm using the opportunity since I have it to kind of accelerate the process of what I'd already started.
Mm-hmm.
Like maybe 6 months ago, I thought maybe my next recording project could be like 2 years out. And now that I've pretty much only had time to work on this stuff, it's a lot closer. So,
Gotcha. Well, that's great.
It's still, daunting, but I should start recording maybe in a month.
Okay. How long do you usually, I mean, obviously it's always different, but how long do you usually try to spend in the studio? I mean, ideally.
Well, it never goes ideally. But for, maybe my more ambitious writing records, the way I would do it would be to try to get a couple of pieces done, not try to do the whole thing at once.
Sure.
I did that my first couple of records.
Wow.
But they were a little bit. I mean, for one thing, it was all. Well, my first record was actually live to 2-track, which was
Excavation.
I mean,
or
no, that was a Flux.
Flux, yeah.
Which so I was kind of new to the game. I didn't realize how ridiculous that was, but we did it. So we did that record in, I guess, just 2 days.
Okay.
But it's more realistic these days to try to maybe do a couple of the more difficult pieces. Just concentrate on those, and then maybe let some time go by. Like even a year sometimes goes by.
Oh wow. Okay.
I mean, for one reason or another, I remember on Hydra, it might have been close to a year between recording sessions.
Wow.
But that was partly because I had to find it in the bass player, etc. for complications.
With some of your duo recordings with like Sonny Kim and Theo Bleckman,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I had a couple questions. Just a question about how you kind of go through the process of like Willow Wheat for me, or I Remember You, like back on that Origami record. Like, what were some of the processes for coming to a standard from such a different angle?
Well, I think Sonny actually wrote those arrangements.
Okay.
At least Willow, for me, that was her arrangement.
Wow. Okay.
And from what I recall, I was using that octave pedal where only the bass strings are down in the trebles. So that's why that sounds like that.
Especially in the duo setting.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you can talk about the flexibility or freedom that you can have, in using a standard or some sort of already, folk song or et cetera that you've done with Theo, and what's the process of you kind of working it out? Does someone just bring the arrangement, or do you kind of collaborate both?
I think one of my goals is to try to access as much freedom in every situation as I can. So, if I have like a constant, like a standard, I'll try to sort of like blow it up and see how free I can actually be over it, how much I can personally interpret it and still, retain the essence of the song. And Theo kind of, thinks along the same lines. So there isn't a lot of discussion or preparation, unless there's a very specific arrangement one of us has done. It's more like a mutual trust, and like he's okay with whatever I'm going to come up with, and
sure,
vice versa. So
when you talk about blowing up a tune, is there anything that, like when you expand on something so deeply or zoom out so much, is it usually something melodically that captures you, or harmonically, or it just depends on the tune as far as the essence?
I would say the essence is generally comes from the melody. And I would have to say that since I've reharmonized so many,
Sure.
so much, my arrangements are kind of like dispensed with the original harmony. But something that, and the melody is generally what suggests the temperament of the piece, what mood is trying to be conveyed.
Yeah.
As I do with pretty much all my writing, I try to come up with as many possibilities or solutions for a setting as possible, and then whittle it down.
Well, when composing, do you ever? I mean, how does that process start in its initial? Do you have an intention of I'm going to write something, or does it just kind of happen naturally, and then you go from there?
Yeah, I do say, okay, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to write. Where like the germ, everything comes from like a little germ, pretty much, and whether it's like a rhythmic idea or a melodic fragment or something. It always starts with something relatively small, and then things that warrant further expansion, I'll try to develop. So I'm just thinking of something I'm writing now, which maybe I had the idea to write something based on the Messiaen Mode 6.
Okay.
Which I do have one tune, which is on a Morphi, that is based on that scale. And I just thought that this, sound can really yield a lot of interesting sort of harmonic solutions. So maybe try something else. And, basically I'm just like noodling around with the notes of that mode and just seeing what typical harmonic stuff I can come up with. And so then a phrase develops, and then that phrase begets other phrases, and but that becomes like maybe the central motive of the piece. And it just goes from there, maybe I'll map out an overall form just to kind of help me fill in the blanks.
Sure.
So I'm just thinking about what I'm trying to finish up now, and it's something else based on Mode 6, and although it departs from it almost immediately, but that was the initial impetus.
Yeah, something, that germ.
Yeah.
Do you tend to record yourself as you write and listen back and kind of edit, or is it more natural? I mean, not natural, but is it just linear? Okay, I have this, just keep going, or do you tend to go back?
Well, yeah, I'm always revising.
Okay.
And I used to, I would record. I think my memory is getting worse, so I'm writing everything down now.
Okay.
I used to almost never write anything down and just remember it.
Sure.
I would have these long pieces that I would just remember, and now I don't know, they're just not the way I work anymore.
Yeah.
It's like there were a couple of like long solo pieces that came out in a book I did that I had to go back and transcribe off the record because I didn't remember how to play it, and I had never written it down. So that was a quite tedious process.
Yeah, that's daunting. I have the first one. It's
a couple in there. I had to relearn and then write all those tiny little notes. Yeah. Why, I have no idea. You don't make money selling like books of transcriptions of yourself. word to the wise.
Good to know.
Yeah. Basically like a glorified vanity project.
Right. An exercise in futility, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Was there anything when you were first composing? Were there any concepts or books or composers or just methods of composition that kind of helped you like develop that skill?
Well, certainly influenced and inspired by a lot of a lot of people. As far as like specific compositional techniques, kind of homegrown. I feel like I never really got like the secondary education that I was always looking for. For one reason or another, I ended up at not to disparage Queens College, but that's where I ended up for most of my college career.
Okay.
And they didn't have a jazz department then, and they had basically, like, I think it was a pretty good theory department, but still there was no. The composition class was kind of like, listen to this piece by Debussy and then go home and write something in the style of Debussy. So that's what we did.
As easy as that.
Yeah, exactly. So I kind of had to find my own way. And then I sort of dropped out of college after a couple of years of that.
So what was your major if it wasn't a jazz?
It was music. It was the title of the major was general music, as I recall.
Wow.
I think it's probably pretty different now.
Sure.
And I know that there's a jazz program there and a good one.
Yeah.
But we're talking like 1983, 4.
Oh, wow. Well, so after you left school, was there anyone, were there any like immediate like mentorships or people that you looked up to as far as composers specifically, or people that were writing that you're like, oh yeah, that's cool. Like I didn't know I could do that.
No.
Okay.
Again, I was influenced by lots of things, but mostly it was records, just like listening to records and trying to conceive of how can I approximate these sounds on the guitar, I'm talking about maybe mostly like classical or
okay
20th century at that point, because it was still the 20th century classical music.
Right.
This is my medium. I'm limiting myself to these 6 strings, but how can I somehow get as close as I can to these sounds that I really love, that are like coming out of the string quartet or orchestra or choir or whatever.
Like explicit, like sonically as well, like trying to capture like the different.
Yeah, sonically and harmonically and just conceptually.
Yeah.
Which meant like exploiting the guitar just to the greatest degree that I can. Like it's got a lot of contrapuntal possibilities that are difficult to negotiate. But
sure.
But that's like one way that you can kind of expand the role into the greater explicitity. And then there's just lots of tempo things that you can do, just even devoid of effects. There's a lot of sonic potential just in like the striking of a string, and what string to choose, or harmonics.
Yeah, I was just going through this book called The Contemporary Guitar. It's all about like modern, like 21st or 20th and 21st century like guitar techniques in like modern new music. And there's
sounds like I'd like to see that.
There's an updated edition, but it was first released in 1985. It's really, you would love it. There's a section about like bitonal sounds, like where when you just like fret a note and like you hear the other pitch.
Oh yeah.
There he talks about how a guy like invented a pickup on the nut that actually pick up that other tone, and like people have written for that sound. I mean, just wild.
Oh yeah, I think Mark Dresser has done that on the bass.
Who?
Mark Dresser.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah, pretty sure he has a pickup up there on the nut or whatever it's called.
Sure. Yeah, I think I like this book a lot because it just talks about so much about those nuances that they're maybe not going to teach you in school. Just all the timbral possibilities and all that stuff. Guitar can be so nuanced.
Yeah, there's so many harmonics too. Like they're not always easy to get them out clearly, though.
Yep.
But there's I'm still looking at discovering new harmonics. It doesn't seem possible because there's not that many notes. But
Yeah, exactly. Well, I know in your last record, on some of the solo arrangements, I noticed a lot of really cool harmonic usage of harmonics, but it wasn't like they were integrated fully into a chord or a passage. It wasn't just on their own, and I thought that was very cool.
I've never figured out how to do the. I guess maybe Lenny Breau made it famous.
Sure.
That cascading harp-like harmonic thing. I thought that's just a great sound. One day maybe after I finish this record, I'll finally learn how to do that. My fingers still work.
Yeah, it's wild. It's incredibly hard, and especially at the depth that he was doing it, where it was so integrated, and like he would do chords with like one note
right
all at once, and to get it to ring out, that's just mind-boggling.
Yeah, Ted Green is really great at that as well.
Sure, absolutely. Well, kind of want to wrap up a little bit, and thank you so much for doing this, by the way. I'm very excited to hear your new recordings, and obviously I hope once it's safe that I can bring you back to Columbus or Ohio.
Yeah, that'd be great. I really enjoyed that. Whenever that was last fall.
I think it was last November. Yeah. Seems like an impossibly long time ago.
I know.
But yeah, we would love to have you back for sure.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely. All right, Ben, take care.
Take care. Bye.
All right, folks, that is it. Episode 1 of Beyond the Frets. It was such a pleasure talking with the master Ben Monder. I really hope you were able to gain some insight into his process and his influences and what he thinks about music and composing and all that great stuff you just heard. If you want to support the podcast, please just like, subscribe, and leave a rating wherever you are listening. Even if you don't listen to this on Apple Podcasts, it would help a lot if you left a rating on there, because that's where a lot of people do find their podcasts. But regardless of your podcast listening or social media medium, you can find the podcast at Beyond the Frets on Instagram, or beyondthefrets.com, or beyondthefretspodcast@gmail.com. Drop me a line. I'd love to hear from you, what you're thinking about the podcast, who you'd like for me to interview in the future. I've got tons of amazing people for this first season. We've got Cecil Alexander and Barry Green, Corey Christensen, Kevin Turner, Brandon Scott Coleman. It just goes on and on and on, and I can't wait to continue with this. So please drop a line, and I cannot wait to hear from you. Remember, new episodes will be dropping every 2 weeks for this first season, so make sure you are subscribed to the podcast so you will get updated as soon as a new episode drops. See you next time.